A little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then that. Maybe not this, but a little bit more of this. And we built an awesome old barnwood style charcuterie board. Do you want one too? Follow me and lass uns anfangen.
There's dirt on my hands, strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
One thing I can never have enough of are charcuterie boards. And when they are built on a budget, even better. I started this project by creating my own stain with vinegar and steel wool. This has to sit for a few days, so keep that in mind if you like to make your own. I just added the steel wool to a glass jar and let the vinegar dissolve the steel. While this concoction is brewing, I started building the charcuterie boards. I went to my hardwood lumber yard and wanted to buy some cheap pine boards. Well, let me tell you, pine is not cheap there. And apparently it's more expensive than cherry lumber, so no thank you. So I went to Home Depot and purchased 2 cheap construction lumber pieces. They will do. I traced on the rough outline of the charcuterie boards, so I know where to cut the pieces. Then I used my miter saw to cut the pieces along the lines that I drew on. I tied back my hair, and, of course, I can find my glasses yet again. Ah, there they are. I purchased 2 2x6 by 8 feet long. Each was $10.73. That means I will be able to build 3 charcuterie boards out of them, making it just over $7 for each board. Now, those boards are way too thick, so I had to cut them in half. I don't have a bandsaw big and powerful enough to resaw those boards, so I used my table saw. I really hate making those cuts on a table saw. Raising the blade that high always makes me a bit nervous. But what do they say? The harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. Nothing worth having comes easy. Well, either way, I want those boards to cut in half. And that's the only way for me to do it. So let's suffer through the process to build those $7 charcuterie boards. I raised the blade little by little with each cut until I was just below halfway through the board. Then I flipped it over and did the opposite side. So in the end I will have a piece left that connects the two sides together. To separate the two pieces, I used my Japanese pole saw. In my opinion, this tool is one of the must-haves in the workshop. Definitely worth the investment. Well, they're only just around $35, so I don't know if I would call it an investment. Either way, great tool to have. And makes for a great workout as well. I separated the other two pieces of lumber the same way. Once all the pieces were separated, I took them over to my table saw to clean up the edges and be able to get a nice glue up. Where did she go? There she is. Boo! For the glue up, I'm using Titebond 3 glue and my pipe clamps. Let the glue dry overnight. I had a few days gap in between since I had to wait for the stain to finish brewing. A few days later, I tackled the rest of the project. First, I traced the shape of the board handle onto the lumber. Then I cut along that line. Having a jigsaw would be great now, but I left mine in Florida. So I took my circular saw and stopped the blade just before it hits the mark. This will leave a corner that's not cut yet. I will use my Japanese steel saw to separate the rest. To get a light, clean bevel, I took my trim router and ran it along the edges. Perfect shape. I repeated all the steps for the other two boards. Once all the shapes were cut out, it was time to make the wood look old, since it's supposed to look like old barnwood. To make the marks, I used a hammer and started hitting the boards to get dents in them. You want the dents with no specific pattern, very random and natural looking. Also bang up the edges and the handle. I wanted the grain of the boards to come through. Therefore, I took a metal wire brush and attached it to my drill. This will clean out the soft wood in between the harder grain, only leaving the grain pattern behind. It takes a bit to take out the softer wood, but it's well worth the time. While it's worth the time, I was thinking if I burned the wood, would it make it any quicker to remove the soft wood in between the grain? So I took my propane torch and charred the wood. And let me tell you, it does make a job much easier to remove the soft wood. Once the boards looked like old barnwood, I applied the stain that I made a few days earlier. I would recommend to try out the stain on a small piece first before you apply it all over the board, because the stain can be very potent, and you might have to water it down with a little bit more vinegar. Also, it can take up to 24 hours for the color to fully develop. Honestly, I did not plan on having the board come out that dark. I was going for more darker, early American color. Well, I guess I'm way off from that. For the second board, I only used about a 20% solution, and it still came out a little bit too dark for my taste. So I'm holding off to stain the third board to come up with a new color scheme. What do you think about the color? For the finish, I applied MeikeMade wood oil with a layer of Musmagus wood butter for a smooth, protective, food-safe finish. And we are fertig! What do you think about the project? Please like, comment, and subscribe. If you can, please join my Patreon. This helps me create more YouTube videos. See you next Friday. Tschüss and auf Wiedersehen.